the vision is so much more bigger than what we see in just the records that we see that, okay, that we've already done 12 events in Europe. We've done 29 events in 12 countries, let's say, in Europe alone as a continent. But the byproduct is also something that focuses on the development of the sport. If you look at 2023, we've already done 2 Brave International Combat Weeks, one in Pan America and one in Europe, in Serbia, which was a world championship. It's all a byproduct of what Brave has done going around the world, bringing communities together, international federation together, the local promoters to come on board towards one goal, and that's the mixed martial art development worldwide. And I think today, entering France, it's going to be a start to a new era where we know that French MMA market is one of the biggest market for the sport. But at the same time, to be there and to have the opportunity for these French fighters, the history of Brave and France has been there way before even France has been actually legalized.
Well, I was going to say, we've done 73 events now. This is to be our 74th. That means we've had 146 main event slots to fill. Out of those 146, I think France is the second biggest representation of main event slots we've had. That's before we've even done an event there.
Wow. So I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think our biggest representation of main event slots is Brazil. Second to that is France. So the French have always been sort of an integral part of Brave. And then when you look at the numbers, you're like, wow, they really are. That's before we've even stepped foot in their country. So imagine the knock-on effect it's going to have now with going there and putting on an event.
Oh yeah, that's crazy. I mean, if we had, we also had 2 French champions. Yep. In Brave Combat Federation. So yeah, our relationship with French MMA has been there. We've been part of that since the beginning of Brave. So it's nice to go back and get these athletes the opportunity to showcase their talent and, just to go fight in front of their fans, their family. It's amazing. We've seen the importance of that worldwide. I mean, when we had fighters like Gamzat Chimaev actually go and fight, not in his home country, but in another country like India.
And he was mobbed.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, people don't get the benefit of going and competing internationally, but at the same time, there is that, I always say that, we hear always champions are not born, they are made. But I also say that, yes, definitely they are made, especially in a sport like combat sports. Champions has to be made, in the gym, in their lifestyle, the daily life that they go through, the sweat, the tears that they put in every single day. But at the same time, there is those special days that they are born as well. And one of those days is going to be September 7th in France, when we have French fighters like Elias and Axel Sola get to be born, regardless of how many years they've been making themselves to be who they are, and get that one opportunity to make the difference.
And I honestly believe we are potentially looking at 2 new champions at some stage with those 2.
Listen, I mean, to have a main event and co-main event where, like the one we have for Brave CF74, it's unbelievable. I mean, it speaks a lot of volume about the kind of main event and co-main event that is. I mean, it's completely different if you look at the fights itself. And that's where I think the beauty is. So just before we get into that co-main event, I want to really start with the main event because I think that main event, when we look at...
Before you go in, just to start it all off, before we talk about the 2 fights.
Right.
We've got 4 fighters here, both, across 2 fights, both of which are in the lightweight division. I honestly believe these 2 fights are going to turn our lightweight division on its head. I think we are looking at 2, potentially 4 guys that are fighting in that division. It is just going to make a huge impact, and everyone's going to go, oh, we've got guys that are coming down. We've got guys that have been a mainstay there. One of them's been in the title picture, one of them's knocking on the door, and then we've got 2 that could blow it on its head. I think it really is going to change the landscape of the lightweight division.
Definitely.
In the main and co-main.
There's no doubt that Kubanic is definitely going to be sitting and watching this fight.
He wants to be.
I think he
Both
wants,
of them.
I think he wants to be in the cage right now.
Yeah,
and
I
fight
think
these
so
guys.
too, yeah.
But definitely, this is going to be, like you said, I think for the lightweight division,
Yeah.
it's a very important day. The significance of this event for the lightweight division is, no, there is no question about it. I think any of these four athletes are ready to go there and say that, to go and have the rights to go and ask for the title. But at the same time, for me, it's the main event is one of those fights that are, we say that there are those fights where you look at it and you say that it might have a really good ending, or let's say a really good beginning, and a very sad story to it. And I think the main event is going to be one of those where it has a story. I mean, you look at these two fighters, you look at Elias and Lucas Martins, the experience between them is crazy. I mean,
Well, you're looking at number 3 in Ilias and number 5 in Lucas of the top 5 rankings.
53 MMA pro fights between them.
Wow.
I mean, if you look at that amount of fights between these two athletes, it's insane, the kind of experience that they bring in.
And 53 at the highest level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, for me, you look at these two athletes. For me, I would say this is the main event is going to be the fight that's going to be focused on the mentality of these two athletes, and it's not because these two athletes are coming at their peak and, they're just looking with that hunger of, I am this young guy at the top of my game and I want to go out there and win the fight. And, that hungry athletes. But this is different. These are two veterans in the sport. Two guys that have seen everything. They have gone through the ups and downs. And for me, I say that if you look at Elias and his story itself, you look at the mentality, you have to go deep into these individuals' mentality. And Lucas Martins, I'll get to Lucas Martins because I've seen him since the beginning of Brave Combat.
I'm going to let you run with Lucas. That's all you.
I really know what kind of mentality he has. But then you're looking at Elias, who's there competing against Lucas, and you're always going to have this question, where does his mindset come from? Is he going to be the one with the superior mentality, or you're always going to have that warrior mentality of Lucas dominating this mental war between these two athletes? And then I go back and you look at the history of Elias. He's one of those athletes or one of those fighters. When you look at their background, he didn't train mixed martial art to actually become a fighter.
No.
He trained mixed martial art to actually win fights, not in the cage, not in the ring, to be a fighter that can defend himself in the streets.
Or excel in the streets. He was defending his district, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you come from that mentality, I always feel like
there's no fear.
There's no fear.
No
and,
fear.
And it's not about, do I have to be a better wrestler? Do I have to be a better grappler? I have to be the best fighter.
Yeah.
And I think there's no place that you can learn that mentality other than someone who's started training martial arts to win fights in the street, to defend himself, to defend his district. And that mentality is something that that it doesn't matter if somebody's good at boxing, somebody's good at grappling. He had to know everything that it takes to win a fight.
What's interesting is that was sort of his motivation, but he quickly fell in love with the sport and found fighting on the street too easy because he was beating everybody because he was so good at MMA. So along that process, he's fallen in love with the sport and now it's everything to him.
I mean, also I think that, the story of Elias, what we were just talking about, is also a great education to all the parents that's out there in any part of the world to understand what mixed martial art really is. And we look at mixed martial art and we think that what's the real socio-cultural significance of the sport itself. And you really realize that one of the key areas of mixed martial art, or any martial arts for that matter, but mixed martial art, because I've been part of that as well, and I've seen so many athletes that has changed their life, where their intention was, it might be good or bad, but the intention of defending myself on the street, or unfortunately, it's not in their control. They're born into that environment. They're born into that circle of drugs, street fight, and it's so much more easier with your free time to actually divert your future into a completely disastrous direction. But Elias is an example of what he was saying, that when he started training mixed martial art, when he started getting deeper into it, one, like you said, he found fighting easier, and he just didn't want to go out there and fight.
too easy.
It was too easy. But on the other hand, he just didn't have enough time, because when you start taking the sport so seriously, mixed martial arts is a sport where you can't go and train boxing for 2 hours every day and you're fine, or you could do wrestling 3 hours every day and that's fine. But now you have to do wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, your conditioning, your grappling and jiu-jitsu techniques. So you have to do all of it, and you're really looking at a week and saying 9 hours a day of training. That alone is not enough for you. If you do that every day, you might not be the best in each individual sport. And you have to compromise and say, I would rather be a brown belt in every other sport, because it's impossible to spend that black belt amount of time in all the sport, because you don't have that many hours in a day. And that is another reason why he didn't have the energy to take that outside and go into a different lifestyle. It's eat, sleep, train, like we say, you know, and it's a great educational story where get your children and the next generation, our youth, into martial arts. Let them train mixed martial arts. Let them go, and not to become a world champion or to become a professional MMA fighter, but simply to make sure you change their culture and their mindset. Keep them out of the streets. Keep them out of all the bad things that could be out there, which might be the wrong inspiration for them. And let martial arts and athletes who really, truly achieve the best through competition, let them be the inspiration.
Well, it opens up opportunities, right? It opens up opportunities through sport that weren't necessarily ever going to be an option before. We talk about opportunities, and you mentioned the mentality. I think it's going to be tough to beat Ilias that night when we talk about mentality.
And this is it, right? Like, we're just telling his story that, you know, he's today he's an example to the youth and to the parents who have children who have the dream to become MMA fighters, or simply for the cultural fact of which direction to lead your children. He's becoming that example today while we're talking about him. But at the same time, there is no better inspiration and motivation to look and say that I am the main event.
Yes.
In my home country, in Brave Combat Federation. You're talking about the most global mixed martial organization in the world. It's entering France for the first time, and you are leading that whole event, carrying the event on the shoulder as a main event.
As a Frenchman.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about a guy that last year thought it was all over. He had a very serious injury. I can't recall the injury. I just know that last year he didn't fight. He was ready to pack it in because he couldn't. He couldn't train. He was ready to give up. The injury was so bad he didn't fight. He came back in June. He looked superb in June. He looked superb, and now he's fighting the main event in his home country.
Oh yeah!
What a change of events.
And that's I have to specify this: the rise, the fall, and the rise again. I think that is going to be the theme of this main event. That's going to be the theme of this main event. So if you look at Ilias, absolutely what you said to the point that he was. What was it, last year you said?
Yeah, last year.
Last year he wanted to hang up his gloves.
He was ready to. He was going to.
And then he comes back and he's had the performance of his life. I mean, not just for him as individual. We as Brave Combat Federation, we're looking at it. The whole Brave Nation, everybody else is looking at that fight and saying that, hold on. He just dominated all us. You know, I mean, this is the guy who had food poisoning.
Food poisoning.
He had a food poisoning when he was fighting the most dangerous lightweight for me in the history of mixed martial art today. This guy is insane, Kubanich. I mean, I've never seen...
He took him 5 rounds.
He took him 5 rounds. And it was a close fight.
Yep.
There's been people who thought that Olzas won the fight as well. So if he took Kubanich, I mean... anyone taking Kubanich to 5 rounds is a gold medal in itself. You can think about it. But to take him to 5 rounds, make that fight that close while he had food poisoning the whole week, I mean, that's super impressive. And then comes Ilias and dominates Olzas.
After a year off.
Absolutely. So, big comeback. Now, that fight was important. Sure, that fight was important to showcase that he is a title contender. I'm out there, I'm hunting for the title, and I'm back. But at the same time, to showcase that performance, you see the ups in his career, how fast he's grown in his career, how many fights and the experience he's had at the top level of the sport, and then have that crash, like you said, where he thought that he want to hang up his gloves, and then he get this big win, and finally there is almost a story that could be written of the rise again. So that story will be written on September 7th, could be written on September 7th. But then why do I say that that's the theme of this main event? Is exactly when you go to the story of Lucas.
Just before we move on to Lucas, you're so right, and I'm going to stress it again. He gets that opportunity while being the main event in his own country, something he's always wanted to do, always. He's also very openly said that he wants to become the face of Brave Combat Federation in France. Not only is he relishing and is in disbelief about being the main event in his own country a year after what happened to him, but he wants to establish himself as the face of the brand in his home country.
Oh, that's crazy. I mean, he's got the opportunity, no doubt.
Let's see.
The stage is set. The stage is definitely set. The story is there. I think from you start martial arts because you're involved in a lot of street fights, and from there you fall in love with the sport, and you have your ups and then you have your downs, and here you get that big win that answered a lot of questions to the lightweight division and to us as Brave Combat Federation and the fans, and deserves the opportunity more than anybody else, 100%, and he's there. But when you're there representing the organization, representing your country to the whole Brave Nation and the people watching around the world, and get the opportunity to be the face of it and write that story of the rise again, possibly, you are there and saying that this is my time, but then you have an opponent in front of you who is bringing that massive following and massive history of fighting behind him.
And he's a warrior.
100%. I mean, Lucas, when you think about, we said that between them there's 53 fights,
yeah.
But you're looking at Lucas Mineiro, and you're seeing what, 21 fights if he's 21 wins he had.
Yeah, 21 wins. Yeah.
21 wins. I think could be wrong with the number, but it's around 18 finishes.
Yes,
18
I believe
finishes.
it is. Mostly knockouts.
Mostly knockouts, yeah. So he said 18 finishes in 21 wins, and that kid's story is something else. I mean, Lucas Mineiro, we talk about mentality. We talk about this fight is going to be the mental war between these two athletes, and we know what their background is and where they come from. But Lucas, he's one guy, and I can really see where his mentality really comes from. And if you look at his history and his background, you will see that every step of the way in his career and in his life, he's, let's say, literally bulled through everything in front of him with that mentality leading him. We were talking about, he started mixed martial art at the age of 22, by the way.
Mental.
And 22, when he started mixed martial art, the funny thing is, in his first year, he had 11 MMA fights.
Wow. And Muay Thai fights as well.
13 to 15 Muay Thai fights. Keeping that aside, he had 11 MMA fights and 13 to 15 Muay Thai fights in his first year. And when you think about Lucas Mineiro, that's exactly what you get. When we say that every opponent you give him, anybody you put in front of him, he's never said no to.
Never says no.
Never say no. He takes whatever you give him. He's there with one goal, and that is, I need to be a world champion. I need to be the best in the world. I need to be the greatest. And that mentality is there with him. And when someone says, how did you take 11 MMA fights in your first year and 13 to 15 Muay Thai fights? Because you're Lucas Mineiro. You're Lucas Martins. And that's the only guy you would look and say, oh yeah, now.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. It makes sense. That if it was Lucas who you're talking about, yeah, it makes sense, and that's where it is. I mean, he's done that. He's gone to the likes of UFC. He jumped in, he got his loss, and he went on a tear with 3 wins in UFC. So this is a guy who didn't say no to anything, whatever came in front of him, whether it was fighting 11 fights in the first year, didn't care. He got a biggest chance to fight in, at that time, Brazil's biggest promotion in Jungle Fight, went out there, showcased his talent, went to UFC, showcased what his quality is all about. But just like Ilias, you always have the ups and downs, and I don't know where that. What was Lucas Minero's really the reason behind his downfall? But I think it's multiple factors altogether. He's not just a fighter today. He's a fighter. He's a coach. He has his own team. He's a businessman. Starts his own gyms. But at the same time, he's also people don't understand, and that's why this fight is so crazy, because you have Ilias who's trying to make that name and the biggest stage of his life, and you want the least amount of pressure you can have, although you're leading, Brave Confederation, becoming the main event in France, in a home country, for the first event that's coming into the country. But then you're fighting a guy who has behind him millions and millions of influencers and celebrities backing him.
And he's a former world champion. He's a former Brave Combat Federation world champion. Not almost, but attempted to become a two-weight world champion also, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. He could have been a featherweight and lightweight division champion, and that was his mentality. He wanted to make history. We're looking at that, and he's coming with. So that's the thing with Lucas. He's so much more than an MMA fighter today, but that mentality hasn't changed a bit. He's still there, looking to be the world champion. And it's funny because when he's had his downs, there's so many things that went against him. I mean, his history in Brave Combat Federation, he's become the champion. He's had his losses, and then the COVID coming in, not having the opportunity to compete, giving birth to a daughter. I mean, not him, but his wife giving birth to a daughter. But at the same time, the key point is all these things happening in his personal life. With COVID, I know a lot of fighters have suffered. We know it firsthand because of the amount of events we've tried to put internationally, and the reason why we also, the point of globalizing is so important, because not every fighter could have gone and fought in one territory just because the promotion finds it easier to make the event there during the COVID times. But Brave has been one of those promotions, even during COVID. We knew that Combat Kingdom was the best place to do events and get the fighters to compete, but we also made sure that we travel around the world as much as we can, following the policies, to be able to get fighters who cannot travel that easily to be able to fight at least closer to their territory. But for Lucas, there's a lot of stories of his fights getting cancelled, his opponents pulling out. He had injuries and he had to pull out. So I would say that was one of the darkest times for Lucas in his career, and he needed to come back and get that win, get that important win, just like Ilias after his downside of his career wanted that very important win. And exactly the same story, you're looking at it and you're actually seeing Lucas come out and put on a crazy performance, amazing performance.
First round knockout, impressed everybody else.
And said that it's my time now. So we're looking at two athletes that had a huge history of the rise that they've gone through from starting mixed martial art. And we're talking about two guys that has been competing for over a decade, 53 fights between them, gone to the highest level of the sport, had that downfall, and now the opportunity to rise again. But the sad part about this main event for me is to look at these two absolute warriors with amazing mentality. Only one story about the rise again can be written on that day. Only one story will continue.
That's right.
And,
well, if Lucas has it his way, I think this may be the hungriest he's been to get back in the cage. And if he has it his way, it's going to be a first round knockout of Ilias and straight on the mic to call out Kubanic for the world title.
Absolutely. And look at it. When you look at Ilias, he's not a guy who's, we say that he's a striker who loves wrestling. He himself says a lot.
He does say that himself.
How much he loves the sport of wrestling. And that also shows how much he's interested in how fast he can adapt to that particular martial art as well. Because when you have that love for a particular sport, I mean, for me, when I trained mixed martial art and when I was competing, I had this, although I started with a background of Muay Thai and kickboxing, and then focus more on jiu-jitsu and wrestling because that was so important for mixed martial art. There was that love, this special romantic feeling towards boxing,
To knocking someone out.
Yeah, but the sport, to the point, yes, of course, but also to the sport itself, right?
Yeah.
To understand the science behind it, to understand the details of it, and you just spend so much time focusing on it because you love it. You give some extra attention. So Ilias, he says that,
it's the opposite for him.
Absolutely. So he loves wrestling, and he's not one of those individuals that you see in his fights. That we're talking about 21 wins for Lucas Martins and 18 finishes. But on the other hand, I think Ilias
18 wins,
18 wins, and he has almost 10 submission finishes.
12 submissions.
Well, there you go. So when you're looking at those numbers
from a striker,
yeah,
mad.
And you look at the numbers, and you're like, do you really think that this main event is going to go to the distance?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's tough because you've got this hungry Lucas Martins. You've got, with his finishing ability, that farm boy strength he's got that has the ability to put Ilias out if he gets the opportunity to. But I think when we look at Ilias, we look at one of Brave Combat Federation's most intelligent fighters in the cage. I think his fight IQ, it's bold to say, is up there with the likes of Jose Shorty Terrace. When we watched him in Bahrain in June, I was blown away about his IQ, his fight IQ. Anywhere that fight went, he knew exactly what to do and how to do it. He implemented his game no matter where the fight went. He adapted. He read his opponent. He downloaded the data. He was superb. His IQ was the most impressive for me. So you're going to need that fighting a guy like Lucas Martins because his intentions are clear. So
not true, but at the same time, I also feel like with these two fighters, everybody looks at them as two strikers, right? And
yes,
that's the crazy thing. They look at these two athletes as two strikers, and for them, it's easier to read their opponents because you know what they think about you, and you know who they are. But it's just like when you look at Lucas Martins, everybody looks at his punching power, everybody knows his Muay Thai background, everybody knows the school he's coming from, and the history of his background when it comes to striking and Muay Thai. But then nobody really knows that he's, or really acknowledges or appreciates the fact that he's a BJJ black belt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the same situation where with Ilias, that now people who listens to us right now knows how much he loves wrestling, and he's but the result of with 10 submissions, that shows that how much he loves grappling and loves to finish the fight wherever it goes, so but with these two athletes, I don't know if they're able to read each other, or I'm sure these are two veterans of the sport, like we said, and I'm sure that they know and they understand, they've seen everything in the sport that you can think of. So I'm sure that they're going to come in studying each other, but there is a lot of element of surprise in this fight, I feel.
Yeah.
Either they're going to stand up and test what we're going to feel from each other. I'm a striker, you're a striker, let's see whose striking is better. But I know that one of these athletes, when he feels like maybe, he might have a slight advantage in the striking department, I need to switch the game. And that's where the real story of this main event is going to start.
Who's going to adapt best?
Absolutely.
I think this fight is going to be more telling when we see the guys in fight week.
Right.
When we see, it's a huge occasion. Lucas Martins is hungry to get back. He's coming to be the main event in his own backyard, in Ilias's backyard, which, going against the away crowd is difficult, but heavy lies the crown for Ilias, I believe. Mm-hmm. Let's see how he handles the pressure fight week. I think we'll be able to tell how emotional they're going to get in the build up to it. Is the occasion going to get to Ilias? Is it going to get to Lucas? Let's see. I think it's hard to call now. I think I'm going to have a better read in it when we see these guys there and then.
But a lot of people don't understand what it feels to compete in your home country. I mean, usually when we look at the sport like football and so, home advantage really exists.
Yes.
It does exist because you have the crowd cheering for you, and because there's a team element to it. But then we're talking about combat sports. We're talking about individual sports, and there's a difference between an individual sport and the team sport. And the reason
100%.
is
there's nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to hide, for sure. And at the same time, individuals are superstars, and you always get starstruck by superstars. So when you see, and I've seen this throughout Brave's history in the past 7 years, and competing in other promotions, I've seen this, that sometimes you could be the home star, you could be fighting in your home country, and you're fighting against a superstar.
Lucas is a superstar.
And when Lucas comes in, he's not coming in as an MMA fighter who's done that, been there. No, he's coming in. Forget his MMA pedigree behind. Let's keep that for a side. He's coming in to France, being one of the most celebrated, influential mixed martial art fighter from Brazil.
Which is crazy to think about.
We could talk about Anderson Silva's. We could talk about a lot of top Brazilian fighters that's out there who are legends of the sport. But I don't think even till today, nobody has a star power and influencer backing the way Lucas Martins have. I've not seen anyone that has influencers, movie stars, singers, name them. They're all behind Lucas Martins. So when we're talking about the hype of what that fight is going to be, I think that influence that he's bringing in, the celebrity factor, will affect anybody. It will even affect your home fans to look at Lucas Martins and see all these YouTubers and from YouTubers to chefs to brand ambassadors to top influential businessmen to soccer stars. I mean, there's everybody. You can think of anyone in the influencer world that you can think of from Brazil that's there behind Lucas Martins. So when you bring in that star power, regardless of whose home it is, everybody is going to be starstruck by that numbers and the loud voice that is going to be making. And I think I could be wrong. Sometimes the home country leans towards trying to be a part of that voice and movement.
Interesting.
And then you look at Elias on the other side, where it is his home country. He is fighting in his home territory. He is bringing the guest over. His opponent is flying over with such big noise that's coming up during the fight week. And then he's there and he's like, the only way I can actually take advantage of this is only if I win. That's the only time I'm going to benefit from everything. I should expect not to have any of that benefit before the fight week.
It's like the Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor situation.
Right.
You become a superstar.
Absolutely. So
this is his opportunity.
And that fight is which is why I really feel the Rise Again is going to be the key. One story can only be told, but that will be literally that story that's worth talking about. And that could be a documentary in itself. It is tough for Elias.
Are we looking at our first Brave Combat Federation movie?
They should definitely write that script. They should definitely write that script. So it's out there. It's really in front of them, And I think it is, which is exactly why I feel like it's a fight of mentalities. It's a mental war between these two athletes, and I don't know how they're going to utilize it. I know that Lucas always comes to that fierce mentality of I'm going to destroy my opponent, and all that power behind him from the influential power, his students, his gym, and the support that he's going to get, and the name he is, as Lucas Martins. He's going to carry every single advantage he can get to come to the Brave event and put that pressure on Elias to make him feel like you really got nothing. I am in your home country. I'm in your home, and I'm going to be the superstar in your home.
I'm still the superstar
in your home. And that's the weight Elias has to actually take. While his goal is, I have to make this happen. He has to make this happen, and he has to write his story. He's got the stage set for him, like we discussed. And how is he going to fight that pressure of, wait, hold on, I am fighting in my home country, but all the attention is on the superstar in front of me, and I don't get an advantage of this. But if I need to take advantage of that, I have to beat him. And that pressure just mounts in, because it's unfortunate in our fight business that although we know that we haven't given you that serious advantage as a fans of his home country or people behind him, but at the same time, if you lose, you will suffer the impact of not being able to carry that weight on your shoulder,
Yeah, fans are really fickle.
And that's that's the thing you have to face. That's the
Yeah.
I think the dark side of the sport, and that's the opportunity that these both athletes have. But on the other hand, it's not Lucas is not coming in without any pressure of his own.
No.
You know, for him,
I feel like it's almost last chance saloon.
he has taken all the risks in his career. I mean, that's the thing. He's bulled through everything. He has not rejected any fight. He has never said no to any opponent that's in front of him, any opportunity that's in front of him. He gets the highest level of competition. He's going to go and actually get that. And, you know, and you sometimes you sit back and you doubt it. You know, it's impossible to doubt Lucas. I mean, if you look at his journey, there's nothing to doubt, and you know that he's mentally he wants to be the greatest, and he's not even an inch of that passion or that goal of his has reduced.
No, he still believes it.
But when he sits and he tells you that I have a daughter, and I want to tell my daughter that her father was a world champion.
Yeah.
And you know, when I look at my daughter, I actually realize how much more I want to fight, how much more active I want to stay, and how much more I want to go there and prove myself. And I think when he says that, it gives you chills to realize that, okay, I know it's hard to doubt him, but now, after what I heard, not that I could not, no need to doubt his mentality, but it's just, I think his mentality just got too wise, stronger than what it was before.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, I think it's last chance saloon. I think it's his last opportunity to go for a title run.
Yeah.
And when we talk about his daughter, you know, he's bringing his daughter to the fight. She's still a baby, but still, it's memories that he can reflect back on and say, you were there, which adds another layer of pressure. It makes that, magnifies what you're saying there.
So what is that opinion? I mean, what is your opinion about bringing...
I couldn't think of anything worse.
Yeah.
Cutting weight and having a baby with you.
Right.
Sounds a disaster.
I mean, I'll always...
To be honest.
Yeah. I mean, not only in that sense. I mean,
pragmatically, it sounds a nightmare.
Cutting weight and having a baby.
Yeah. Am I wrong?
No, that sounds pretty tough. But I'm sure that he's got someone, his team with him. But
I hope so.
To add to that, I also think that, like you said, the added pressure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is really an added pressure. I mean, it's a toddler.
No, it's baby. She's a baby.
It's baby.
Baby.
Baby,
like 1 year old.
1 year old. So yeah, I think it's less pressure than when they're 5, 6, or 7. When you're you know.
Yeah.
You know, I think so.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that this might be a good time, like you said, to say that you were there.
Yeah.
But it would be worse if it was a 5, 6 year old and they could
Better
actually
to tell them what happened rather than them remember what happened.
Right. Yeah. But see, and that's why for me this main event is something special, because definitely I know, or I feel like when you look at the records of their finishes, I don't think this fight is going to go to the distance. But apart from that, you're still looking and saying that these are two veterans in the sport, and you know, both of them are going to bring surprises, and because it's hard to read these two athletes. You know, I mean, they, like I said, they come from a striking background, a lot of grappling background that is untapped, let's say. So there's a lot of surprises these two athletes can throw at each other, but at the same time, it is fortunately, unfortunately for one and the other, that it is a great story that they've built till today, and this is that rise again story that only one can be written.
Are we making predictions?
I'll be honest. I usually try to read the fights and try to understand the technical aspect of the fights, and that's why I said that I think there's going to be a lot of surprises in this fight. Both can finish the fight, but I don't know. I mean, it's for me.
I don't know either yet. I don't know. Like I said, I think I need to see him.
But I can predict that it is going to be. It's not going to go the distance.
I think I think there's merit in what you're saying there.
I think it's not going to go the distance, and that's the best prediction I can make. That I don't know what's going to happen, but it won't go to the distance for sure.
Cool, we slimed out that one, didn't we?
Yeah, but and that's the funny thing, right? So we speak about the mentality, the war of mentality between the main event, and then you're setting the stage for that main event by a completely different co-main event. You're looking at the co-main event.
This one excites me, like really, really excites me.
I mean, listen, I can't believe that this fight is happening. I can't believe that this fight is happening. I mean,
know.
It's
Is that you telling me I did a good job?
yeah, that was a good job. The co-main event was fantastic. I mean, I can't believe that this fight is happening because, again, it's. I always love to look at the meaning of the fights and what the foundation of what Brave has been always doing in terms of sports development, in terms of building athletes from the amateur level and giving them the opportunity, but also to create superstars like no other organization has been able to build superstars. You look at some of the biggest stars in the world, from Benoit Santini to Johnny Walker to Gamzat Chimaev, Ilya Topuria, you can name them, Stefan Loman, Jarrah Selavi, Hamza Kohiji. You look at every territory as well. So the biggest star has come from Brave Combat Federation, and that also shows the program that Brave has in terms of superstars that they're building. At the same time, a lot of answers are given through this exercise. So a lot of people think that you want to be a star, you have to. There's a common saying where they say that to build a star, it's your responsibility. You have to sell the fight as a fighter. And I don't think you can just say that and throw that into the, on the shoulders of the fighters and say that it's your responsibility of why you're not the greatest. You have to sell the fight. Just so you're just actually trying to say that winning is not enough. Being the greatest fighter is not enough. Being the best over your opponent is not enough. You have to do what? You have to sell the fight. So it doesn't really make sense to me. I understand the business side behind it and why that is important for the business, but I don't think that is the right answer to an athlete. I think the weight of selling that fight and making them into superstars and what they can do and make them let the world see their potential is the responsibility of the promotion. With that being said,
When we look at potential,
absolutely right. Like French MMA. I'm asking French MMA. Literally, we've been watching MMA. Like I've been watching MMA since God knows how long. Since the beginning of mixed martial art, I've been watching it, and I'd really love to hear this from Kirik as well, who's the OG of mixed martial art, to really know. Have we seen a French MMA athlete? There've been so many legends in French mixed martial art, but can you think of a French mixed martial art athlete that you look at from the past and present and the future as well, that you're looking at it and you're saying that this guy could be that athlete? Like you look at Canada and you're remembering GSP, you're looking at Russia and you're seeing Khabib, and you have these athletes who's been the unbeatable kind of athletes that everything fits in. They're a complete fighter, and you're looking at that and you're saying that in France, who did we have who looked and said that, okay, what if he faces a wrestler? I mean, he's a great fighter, he's a great athlete, but what if he faces a wrestler? What if he faces a grappler? What about his experience behind him? What about his strength? What about, there's a lot of questions that could be asked. He might be a great boxer, great kickboxer, a great entertaining fighters, but the complete fighter that we know that is going to carry that flag and, go deal with anything that the world of mixed martial art brings. Can you name or think of a fighter in the history of French mixed martial art?
Axel Sola.
Axel Sola. Absolutely, right? I mean,
Yeah.
We've seen him since he was 15 competing in the amateur levels, right? And we're talking about a completely different storyline from the main event, where those guys have seen what's in front of them, went through the rise, bulled through it. And then today we're talking about the co-main event. I mean, right now we're talking about the co-main event where, no, this is the new breed of mixed martial art athletes that have started mixed martial art, not at the age of 22, at the age of 7, they've been training martial arts. So they grew up knowing nothing other than martial arts. So martial arts, sports, you come from that background, and he's been training mixed martial arts since he was 15. So if you think about it, he's been training mixed martial arts since he was 15. He's been training karate since he was 7-year-old. And that's the kind of breed we're talking about. And then they go through this amateur ranks, which is so undersold, let's say. And you're looking at two of these guys, 6-0, 6-0. We're always thinking about, okay, two undefeated guys, both 6 wins in their pro career. But that 6-0 and this fight that we are going to actually see and the record is so misleading.
It's so misleading. So misleading.
So misleading with their experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just simply the tip of the iceberg, because the experience that they have. So, and Axel says this. Axel was saying that, yes, he's 6-0, I'm 6-0, but the MMA experience that he has is something else. I mean, if you look at his amateur career, I don't know, he's had what, 23, 24?
He was 18-5 as an amateur.
18-5.
He was the number one pound for pound senior amateur. He was, just reading here, 2018 European gold medalist, 2019 Oceania gold medalist, 2019 Pan American gold medalist, and then 17 and 18 was world silver medalist. This is all in IMMAF, not just amateur. These are his IMMAF accolades. Notable wins: Isa Isakov.
Wow. I mean, that.
Talk about a resume.
Yeah, you've already come into the pro world with 24 fight experience, with being pound for pound number one, winning gold medals at European, Pan Ams, and where else? Oceanias, and getting silver medal in 2 world championships that he's competed in. I mean, that is literally what we say, that we don't see that kind of experience in the old school MMA fighters. They never could carry this with them. And
just before we continue, this is a guy that's considered as well. He's very smart. He stayed in the amateurs purposefully to conclude his studies in sports science. So not only is he obsessed with MMA and he has his pedigree of MMA, he studied sports science, and he has the ability to heal, to understand his body in a way that is quite rare for MMA guys to be this sort of astute, so to speak. I remember recently he had he injured his knee, but he recovered it himself with his background in sports science. So he saw the merit in being at university and studying sports science, and he carries that through to his career and his prep. He does it all himself.
When you talk about a complete fighter, we have this. A lot of people, when they define complete fighter, they always talk about the styles.
Yeah.
And the levels of the skills that they have in each different sports, and also the physical fitness, definitely. I mean, the understanding of the physical fitness as well. But one of the things that I always say that should be added in those skills is the size of the brain, just to give, to put it in a very simple words, but I don't mean the size of the brain, how big the brain is, but the size of the brain in the sense, the amount of information that brain has, and has the ability to take information at a very fast pace. And when you see athletes who are studying along with fighting, and especially like you said, if he's actually studying sports science, recovering himself, understanding what recovery is. I mean, a lot of athletes from 10 years back still don't really know how to deal with, understand their body, and definitely you might have a coach with you, you might have different levels of coach, from nutritionist to recovery coach to strength and conditioning coaches, but the importance of understanding your body yourself is something else. I mean, if you have that knowledge, you really can see your pros and cons, assess your growth,
and having the foresight to do that, to stay in amateurs longer, so you sort of establish that, to then carry that into the pro ranks is it's not something you see in this sport very often.
It's very intelligent,
smart.
Right?
It's very smart. What's also quite telling as well is, when you talk about, just picking up on your point where you talk about knowing your body and understanding it, we're looking with Axel, a guy that this is going to be his first fight at lightweight for Brave Combat Federation. He's fought at 79 kilos, 77. He's fought and dominated the bigger guys. At 75, he's fought as well. He's slowly brought himself down, knowing his body, when it was the right time to move to lightweight. We're seeing this guy that's dominating the upper weight classes, probably a natural lightweight, but understood, I'm not quite ready yet. Let me get the experience with these big boys, then let me come down and dominate. This is what we're about to see.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I really want to stress on when we talk about Axel Sola. I mean, the new breed of athletes that are complete fighters, that have
super athletes,
so much knowledge, has information about every different martial arts, understand each of these martial arts at the highest level, knows what mixed martial art competition requires, knows how to learn their opponents and put up a game plan that could be a successful game plan. And having all that information and having all that knowledge, but at the same time, like you said, staying in amateur level and going through that amazing achievements to have those achievements, but also get that experience through that. I mean, it's insane to, we've never seen, I don't think that till today, in my history at least, I could be wrong, but my history, I've never seen anyone in French MMA that you could look at, say that this is the biggest prospect. But at the same time, very important that I have to say this, Axel Sola was the biggest French MMA prospect when Brave Combat Federation signed him, because he was already the pound for pound number one. We knew his quality, we knew what he was capable of. But today, after 6-0, he's not the biggest prospect in mixed martial art, but I think he is, for me, the biggest mixed martial art draw from France, because there is nobody else that I can look from French MMA and see the quality that he has.
He's the most complete fighter. He most complete, and I think it's bigger than the biggest French prospect at the time for when we signed him. I think he's one of the biggest global prospects.
Right, absolutely, yeah. No, he still is, right?
Yeah,
he still is there. Where we say that, where we look at him and say that, like, from his achievements, I mean, you could compare him to the biggest athletes we have at Brave Combat Federation and in the world today, and he's right up there, with the best. And it's time for him to go out there in the co-main event again. A lot of people who haven't seen him fight will actually get the opportunity to see that, guys, doesn't matter where you're from, the event is happening in Nantes. You're from Nantes, you're from Nice, from where Axel Sola is, or you're from Paris or anywhere from France, you're actually going to get to witness in the co-main event on September 7th. For me, hands down, the biggest prospect that has come out of France. And today, he is the biggest draw and the most complete fighter. Like, you could put him next to a picture of Boyka, the most complete fighter. And that would be fair, I mean, it's unbelievable how this kid has built himself to where he is today. So it's insane. But, and he said something interesting, right? Like I've said that before as well, where he said that Vladislav is a complete fighter.
Yeah.
Axel says that Vladislav is a complete fighter.
I can't wait to talk about him as well. So
he says that he's the most complete, he's a very complete fighter. Yeah. But I have more MMA experience.
Yeah.
And my MMA experience is going to make me win this fight, because
when you look at complete fighter,
and when you look at Vladislav and you're looking at him and you're like, right, he's 6-0, just like Axel Sola is 6-0, but Axel Sola has 24 fights, amateur MMA fights behind him, and you're looking at amateur MMA fights for Vladislav and there's nothing behind him. But the most successful combat sambo athlete in Ukraine of all time. Ukrainian combat sambo legend. We're talking about a legend in a sport in Ukraine is here. He's competing against Axel Sola in the main event. Like, this guy, yeah, go ahead.
It's not even 4-time champion. That's impressive. He's 4-time consecutive champion in 2 different weight classes.
The last person from Ukraine who's done that, how many times did they take it?
They haven't done it. The next closest to him is 2.
Two-time world
champion. This guy's 4-time world champion. His father is his coach. His father has also had before him 3 other world combat sambo champions from Ukraine. So when you talk about lineage, when you talk about success, this is the production line he's come from.
Oh, this reminds me, I mean, this is, when I was listening to the story of Vladislav, the first thing that popped into my mind was, that's Vladislav in mixed martial art, and there's Lomachenko in boxing, right?
Yeah,
you look at that.
The father is the trainer.
Absolutely, and how the son has to carry that, let's say that benefit of having a great coach as your father. You live that life every single day, but at the same time you have to live up to it, and they actually do live up to it and become the legend of the sport.
Lomachenko's done all right, hasn't
he? He's all right.
Yeah, he's done all right.
He's got a little bit of good head movements, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he's done all right.
It's not bad. But that's the thing. I compared Lomachenko with him because that's Lomachenko in mixed martial art, and you're coming from that background. I mean, like you said, you nailed it. Legend in the sport, legend of Ukrainian combat sports.
Not only that, he's a judo black belt and master of sport. He's also a master of sport in hand-to-hand combat. So, okay, there's an argument to say that he hasn't got the MMA experience that Axel Sola does at amateur level. But there's also argument to say he's probably more experienced at a higher level in other martial arts.
Listen, combat sambo, all right? You ask anyone we've seen.
There's someone quite famous that come from there, isn't there?
Right, there is. I mean, but that's
Also,
what we're
father as a trainer, right?
exactly.
Similar kind of story there.
Similar story, yeah, absolutely right. But this is not new anymore. Like combat sambo, how influential combat sambo is to mixed martial art, it's not new. I mean, we've seen over and over again in the history of mixed martial art in the past decade how combat sambo athletes actually come and dominate in mixed martial art.
Vela Murad.
Absolutely, and that's a good example, right? And you're looking at them, and the reason why is that is the closest martial art outside of MMA to MMA. And I can't think of another sport as close to combat to mixed martial art than combat sambo. And when you are a four-time world champion,
Consecutive in 2 different weight classes. We have to stress that. It's so impressive.
Unbelievable. And I was watching. I was reading an interview of Vladislav when he won the combat sambo world championship in Serbia. That was his 3rd world championship. And he was so proud of what he achieved, and he was like, literally, and that was during the COVID time. The event happened, was hosted in Serbia, and at that time they asked him, "What do you feel like? How does that impact you when there's no public and no fans there to cheer and support you?" So, and for him, he was like, "There's only one thing in my mind, and that is the goal, and that is the only motivation I need."
That's a winner.
You know, and
that is a winner.
That's all that matters to him, and it's insane that he says that, he lives that, and he was like, you know, and he was saying that for this is not just for him, it's for his whole country and for everybody else that thinks that when you go to a competition in combat sambo, there is this thought that you always have is that. Who am I going to compete with for the 3rd place? You know, so you always have the top Russian athletes taking the 1st place and 2nd place, right, in the finals. And he says that there's this a common thought of, who am I going to be competing against for 3rd place? And he changed that completely, and he gave 100%. That opportunity to open doors and make people think that we can do it too. And Russian combat sambo athletes are just an athlete that has their weakness and their strength, just like other athletes, and he proved it, you know. So combat sports, combat sambo, like you said, I mean, just listening to the achievements, we just spoke about Axel Sola's achievement. He's 4-time
consecutive
world champion
in 2 different weight classes.
2 different weight classes. Master of sport in combat sambo, master of sport in judo, a judo black belt, and master of sport in hand-to-hand combat. I mean, that's one achievement you're going to see on one side, while on the other side you're seeing someone who has done the same at the amateur MMA level. Now, I have a very important question. We've seen every sport evolve, and that evolution we've seen in mixed martial art more clearly than the sport itself. So when there was a time when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came up, and the importance of knowing ground game, and although there were amazing athletes, great fighters at that time, when this sport came in, and knowing and learning the sport was so important to have that background, and people who had that background before entering MMA always dominated. We saw the same with wrestling, and then we're seeing the same with combat sambo, where we look at it, and a lot of people look at that as a difference between the wrestling styles, between the Dagestani Russian wrestling with the American or the European wrestling. But I think it's also the fact that they understand combat sambo, and combat sambo is the most important martial art that makes the difference. And these athletes that come from combat sambo specifically have come up and have so much more experience going into MMA, until MMA athletes have experience in mixed martial art itself before coming into pro MMA fights. And we've never seen that happen. Now we're seeing that new breed. And 2 of these athletes that starts their training at the age of 6 in Vladislav and the age of 7 in Axel Sola. But one difference that we're going to be actually seeing, and this is where I'd love to see the answers to this, is when you look at the background, they say that from a young age I've done combat sambo, and that's what makes me different from an athlete who's done mixed martial art. But now you have an athlete opposite to him in Axel Sola, who's not just done combat sambo. Instead of that, he's actually done the sport itself, and achieved the achievement that he's had as pound for pound number one IMMAF athlete. So the question is, would that be the new evolution in mixed martial art where, yes, coming from a combat sambo background was great, but that's not mixed martial art background. So we're going to see a person that comes from that mixed martial art amateur pedigree entering into pro, from a person that we've already used to and understands the value of combat sambo, moving into the pro MMA record. And that, I think, is going to be a battle for a new answer in mixed martial art.
Do you know what I'm going to sprinkle on top of that? Someone's O's got to go. They're both 6-0. They're both coming down to lightweight. Axel's fought at lightweight once before. Vladislav's never fought at lightweight. They're both used to being up in the high weight classes. They're coming down.
Factor.
Big factor. Big factor. What's also interesting with Vladislav is that one of his goals when he entered mixed martial arts was to fight for Brave Combat Federation. He's fulfilling one of his goals. He's fulfilling one of his dreams. He's so confident that, one, it's going to be fight of the night. Two, that he's going to finish Axel with either KO or submission. Wow.
Insane. And it's even more, it's amazing to hear that and to have to see that he's got the opportunity to fight in Brave and at a co-main event in France, a historic event for Brave as well, right? And I think it was 2021 or 2020 when he was at the World Championship that he said at the Combat Sambo World Championship, when he was interviewed, he did say that my goal, although I am making history here, the end goal is going to be dominating and being the best in the MMA world. And I'm looking forward to competing at MMA at the highest level. And he's done that, what he was saying in mixed martial arts. He's 6-0, takes all his credentials, and now he's the most global mixed martial organization in the world, and he's got that opportunity to live up to what he was speaking about at that interview at the World Championship.
See, what's interesting when we go back to what you said before as well is that typically that occasion might get to some people because you're going against Axel Sola with the credentials he has, being the number one amateur pound for pound, being 6-0, being the biggest draw in French MMA, as you said. That would be quite intimidating. But when we go back to his mentality and we talk about him in combat sambo, and it didn't matter whether there's a crowd there, it didn't matter, all he focuses on is winning, I think it's not going to make a difference. I really don't. I think this guy he's coming in hot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think for Vladislav, there is no question about pressure, right? I mean, he's living that.
I think he eats it for breakfast.
You think about it. I mean, yeah, exactly, right? Because stress is something that he's living all his life with. When you have a legendary father as your coach, a legendary coach as your father, let's say, it's not, the difficulties of living up to it. And I'm not talking about just competing and winning medals, but your lifestyle day in, day out, right?
Yeah.
And you have to live at a standard, and then to make history for your country. He's done that. He's made history for his country. He's a legend of the sport. He's a legend in his country. He's the greatest combat sambo athlete from Ukraine. I mean, that's the second place has not even
half. There's half the amount he's got.
Half the amount that he's got. So he is living that. He's actually living that. People are behind him. Everybody in Ukraine actually knows that this fight is not what they're looking at. For them, I don't know if they're already looking ahead for the lightweight title already, and that mentality might be there for his fans because they know what he's actually bringing on the table. And but for me, I really think the question that will be answered on that day is going to be about the background. We never really. People don't really speak about it a lot, that we talk about everyone's background, how good he's at wrestling, how good the guy come from combat sambo background, and how much that is a part of MMA. But guess what? If I'm going to be good at a sport, I wish I was doing that sport all my life.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to be good at football than to play football all my life. Yes, sure, I might play beach football, and it might be the closest thing when I'm competing with people who hasn't played actual football, but I would rather have had the opportunity to play the actual sport or, train in the actual sport. And that's what Axel Sola has done. And that's why, for me, a big answer, a big question will be answered on that day when we're looking and saying that we all know the history of having the background in combat sambo. We knew jiu-jitsu, the background in jiu-jitsu, how it helped, but then you had to develop that with wrestling because the question was you're on top or you're on bottom, the dominant position, and you could win a fight by just being in a better position, and then the rules started changing, and you had to be more active. And then combat sambo, the bought in submissions, the bought in leg locks, that bought in high-level wrestling combined together with strikes was the closest thing to mixed martial art. And then we have the likes of Axel Sola. When we say the most complete fighter, we're talking about even his background where he has that 24 fight experience in mixed martial art, not something that is close to mixed martial art. In mixed martial art itself.
In IMMAF, the highest amateur
absolutely
competition there is.
So we might get an either answer to a new question that is what the next generation is going to look like.
Either way, it's not often like either way, whoever wins, it's super impressive. Because if Axel answers those questions, being the combat, there's nothing he hasn't faced now. You do have the biggest draw in French, but there's nothing. But then on the flip side, Vladislav beats that pedigree. Like either way, the answer is, wow, we've got something here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. And this is the key point, I think, what you mentioned. I mean, these guys, that's why I said it's so different from the main event, right? I mean, you're talking about two veterans at the main event, and then the co-main event is two young guys at the peak. I mean, this is the time. This is their time, right? I mean, there's a time they're at the peak. They've developed to a point where they are here, the co-main event, where they know that this is the time I'm taking my biggest fight. This is the time I'm going to keep taking my biggest fights. This is the time that I'm going to defend my titles. This is the time the world is going to write my story, you know? So this is that time for them.
I think for both of them, this fight is the start of this.
Absolutely.
The start of their career going bang.
Oh, no, for sure. It's
and someone's got to lose their O at the same time.
Exactly.
It's crazy. It's a crazy fight.
No, but see, for me, it comes down to mixed martial art, I guess. I think this is what's going to be the story. Like, I really took what Axel said seriously when he said that his mixed martial experience is going to make the difference. And I think I really am curious as from an MMA fan perspective to see that what's the experience in mixed martial art that we're really trying to talk about. Not that he hasn't gone to big competitions. Vladislav, we've spoke about him now. Big competitions, big achievements, high-level wrestling, high-level grappling, high-level striking. I mean, they're everything. I mean, the closest thing to mixed martial art, right? And at the highest level you could ever imagine, a legend. But what's MMA going to bring that he hasn't faced before in terms of experience? And I think that is what we're going to see from Axel Sola. I think the starting of the fight, controlling the cage, understanding the cage, and defining every different part of the sport, in a sense, whether it's a cage control, getting taken down, walking the cage, understanding that system of mixed martial art. I think that's where Axel has really excelled from the amateur record, because you're talking about amateur fights, and in amateur fights you don't get to knock out people that easily. That's something a lot of people don't understand. But at the same time, it's 3 rounds of 3 minutes, so you don't have enough time. Your mind runs faster, your strategies run faster. You're playing a different game there.
That's one of the things that when you speak to Axel and you realize how dialed in and as intelligent he is. He credits his amateur experience for being able to manage his energy and understand his body and taking that into the pro ranks. Because typically in amateur, you fight a lot of fights in a very short period of time. You have to intelligently manage how you fight. But that's valuable experience going into the pros.
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, manage the energy. Absolutely right. It's so important to manage that energy. But at the same time, with that, if you're looking at executing the game plan, in an MMA cage, you're executing the game plan. In that 3 minutes, in 3 rounds, it's like amateur boxing. There's not much strategy you can apply. You have to cut your strategies down to 2 or 3, do some of the basics,
and
make
score
it excellent.
Points.
Win
the point, but win the fight by scoring points.
Absolutely. And when you give that individual who has done that around the world for years and at the highest level and win in doing that. When you give him that 5 minutes, it makes a huge difference. He's got so much more time to analyze. He's got so much more time to adapt. You see something go wrong in the first minute, you just have 2 minutes. And out of that, if you are slow to adapt, you already lost the round because, you gave the guy 2 minutes of domination and you got the last round. But here, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's almost 50% more time.
Absolutely. So that I think that's a very crucial, let's say, strategic analysis that's going to decide this fight as well. But I can't believe how good this co-main event is.
Oh, it's so good.
It's insane. And that's why when you started with the lightweight division, when you spoke about the division itself, I think we're talking about September 7th in France, Nantes, HBC Arena. We're actually seeing co-main event and main event that's top 4 lightweights competing against each other for their careers, for their gold. And I think everybody who are not competing in that event at the lightweight division are actually going to be looking and really learning these athletes because they know
they need to
coming.
be watching, because I'm going to throw it out there. Out of those 4 fighters, I believe we find our next contender.
Yeah, most likely, definitely. I think you do have the likes of Camille and the likes of Amina Youbs. All of us is still there in the mix, all these guys are out there. It's really a stacked division. I think Axel Sola, it's so important for him. And I think it is one of the... I don't think it is the biggest fight in his career.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, and I think... no better way to perform, no better place to perform.
And it's the first time as a co-main event.
Right.
And talk about pressure. The co-main event in Axel and the main event in Ilias are both from the same gym. They're both flying the flag. So if one wins and the other one doesn't, you know what I mean? You both want to be winning.
Oh, the energy
that
in the
one.
gym will be mental.
Exactly.
So they must be having that energy, that co-main event, main event from the gym. I mean, that's a nice atmosphere to be around.
100%.
I think.
Added pressure.
Sure, but at the same time, you're getting all that support from your team because you know that 2 guys, and you're not the only one going through it by yourself.
Yeah.
You're going together,
Cutting weight together, being in, sharing the changing room together. Be it like it's all leading up to that. The pinnacle of that event is awesome. That energy is going to be awesome. I can't wait to witness it. To be honest,
definitely, and I think the weight cut is going to be an interesting one at the co-main event.
Yes,
it's going to be an interesting one. But when we were talking to Ilias as well, he mentioned that Axel loves training and sparring with heavier opponents.
Yes.
He is a big kid, and
he is a big boy. He is.
And he's got that strength as well. So when you see him after the weigh-ins and you see him walk into the cage, you're looking at him and you're like, that kid is big. But at the same time...
I think the same is going to be said for Vladislav.
Right? You just mentioned that Axel Sola has fought in 79 kg, 77, and now at lightweight. And I think that's the same thing with Vladislav. I think he's fought in different weight classes.
He's fought middleweight as well.
He's fought in middleweight. I mean, yeah. Now enough said on that one. I think that's perfect.
We just need to watch the fight now, right?
No, 100%. It's and I can't wait for the co-main event and the main event. I mean, I know that the main event is something that I'm looking at main event and I'm sitting on my seat and I feel like I'm actually watching a movie a movie that's definitely going to have a good ending and a bad ending at the same time, and that gives you that mixed emotion with the same ending, And I think that's what it's going to be. And I don't think it's going to go to the distance, while I'm so excited for the co-main event as a fan to watch that fight, to get those answers to the questions. And a lot of people are going to have this mentality that what ideology they have when it comes to how to create an MMA superstar. These are those 2 superstars at their peak.
Yeah.
These are the most complete fighters. Both of them at the peak of their careers, and all they know is combat sports, and that's the kind of generation we will be seeing a lot more in the future. And these two guys are a huge competition at that level.
100%.
But yeah, another fight, no prediction. I don't think I'll be able to predict this one as well. But I'm sure it's going to be a treat to watch. And I think this is one fight. A lot of people want to see finishes, want to see. I don't really care about this fight. I'm going to be sitting there. If I could have a notepad in my hand and just take notes, regardless.
It's one of those fights, isn't it? Just
Absolutely.
a pleasure to watch. It's just going to be a pleasure to watch.
I think all the people who love to do breakdowns of fights and coaches who likes to analyze fights, I think this is going to be that fight that has that opportunity to do that, you know?
This is your fight, guys. This is your fight.
Yeah. And that's similar to, for me, when we spoke about Nkosi and Shorty, I didn't expect that was going to happen. I did not expect that was going to happen. But today when I look back at that fight, and I'm like, but why didn't we expect? Because we saw that same two athletes that came from that background from a young age, competing in the amateur records and going in there. We didn't. Now that we learned, we know what it is, and we definitely can expect that in this fight.
I have a feeling we're going to be sitting here doing the same reflection we did for Nkosi and Shorty for this fight.
No, I would love to do that. There's no question. I'm going to be watching it with a notepad in my hand. You know, no question about that. And
we'll both be watching this one live, so there's no skewing.
Yeah, but let's watch it again. This time, let's watch live, and we have to make sure that we watch it again.
Okay.
And see. I think every time you watch a fight twice, thrice, you're always gonna have. Every time you watch, it's gonna be different. I mean, fights like this. I mean, like,
yeah.
Not all the fights, but you know, and at the same time, when you have someone who has done everything he said in his career and his life and always predicted the future 3 to 4 years ahead, like Vladislav, when he says that he can promise that this fight is going to be the fight of the night, you know what, I believe him.
I believe him too. Do you believe him he's going to get the finish? I don't know about that, but I believe it's going to be fight of the night.
No, I believe him, definitely. Looking forward to that.
Same.